As a teacher, our journey towards integrative STEM education at the high school level begins with learning to stop being the sage on the stage and becoming the guy on the side.
In 1930,
everyone remembers having high school teachers like this guy.
In an effort to alleviate the effects of the, anyone? The Great Depression, passed the, anyone? The tariff bill, the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act, which, anyone, raised or lowered? Raised tariffs in an effort to collect more revenue for the federal government. Did it work? Anyone? Anyone know the effects? It did not work, and the United States sank deeper into the Great Depression. Today, we have a similar debate over this. Anyone know what this is, class? Anyone? Anyone seen this before? The Laffer curve. Anyone know what this says? It says that at this point on the revenue curve, you will get exactly the same amount of revenue as at this point. This is very controversial. Does anyone know what Vice President Bush called this in 1980? Anyone? Something DOO economics. Voodoo economics.
As math teachers, our first steps toward integrative STEM education is learning to move from a sage on the stage or traditional classroom teaching to a guide on the side, where students are encouraged and taught to take responsibility and be held accountable for their own learning, while we, as teachers, become the facilitators of that learning. Learning to become guides on the sides supports integrative STEM education because student learning is driven by the design process, where to a large degree, students guide their own learning and work through the design process on their own. However, for many, small steps need to be taken in order to get to this. One first step math teachers learning to become a guide on the side can take is using the College Preparatory Mathematics Curriculum, otherwise known as CPM. In 1994, Casamatis et al. Espoused that CPM organizes itself so that students rely on each other, talk to each other, ask each other questions, compare answers, explain solutions, and in general try to help each other. And for the most part, they do all of this without teachers hovering over them. CPM creates the bridge that transports math teachers from traditional pedagogy to constructivist pedagogy simply by the way each lesson is structured. The following images illustrate this structure. You should notice that each lesson is prepared as a series of problems that student teams solve together. Teachers begin the lesson with 2 or 3 sentences that relates the day's lesson with the previous one and introduces the new lesson. Once that is complete, students work together to solve the assigned problems while the teacher moves around the classroom providing support and guidance. Still unclear as to how CPM relates to integrative STEM education? Dedeker and Baldinger, the managing editors of CPM, understand that mathematics is a coherent intellectual system, not a collection of disjointed facts, and needs to be taught in a way that makes this coherence clear. Each course consistently weaves strands of topics together so that the connections emerge naturally and can facilitate deeper understanding. Let's take a closer look at the lesson structure to emphasize key strategies that support teacher as facilitator and in an integrative STEM curriculum. The lesson title provides the teacher and student with an essential question for the day, thus giving students a question to focus their work and discussion. It also clearly indicates the intent of the day's lesson, letting students know what they should be able to do by the end of the lesson. The small teacher piece at the beginning of the lesson connects prior student knowledge to the day's lesson. This is one of only 2 possible times the teacher will have to stand at the front of the classroom to speak with students. The very first problem students are presented with provides them with the lesson's problem. In this case, the topic lends itself to a number of different physics content that can be included to increase student relevance. This example also provides ample opportunities for students to try solving the problems many different times until their best solution is found. Guiding questions are provided to help student teams focus their discussions. Students will typically collect data that will later inform their conclusion. And that data is then analyzed and used to draw conclusions and then evaluate those conclusions made. Naturally, no course is complete without a class discussion to help students further evaluate their conclusions. This is the second time a teacher would need to stand in front of the students to lead them. The class discussion is followed by students being given the opportunity to retry and/or refine their conclusions. And the final step offers students the chance to communicate their conclusions and share what they learned with their classmates. The U.S. Department of Education's Pursuing Excellence Report of 1996 indicated 3 important categories of math education reform, which were hands-on, real-world math, cooperative learning, and a focus on thinking. Consequently, this line of thinking agrees with CPM's approach to teaching, but takes these notions even further with the subtle inclusion of the design process framework. Implementation of the CPM curriculum in the high school math classroom supports teachers transitioning to constructivist pedagogy, which then promotes and leads to an integrative way of thinking, which eventually encourages an integrative STEM approach to learning. So how do we get teachers here? The first step is education. Teachers need to learn and understand and make these connections on their own. And adequate time and appropriate resources need to be made available. They then need to experience this method of learning personally in order for them to be able to have those aha moments. Finally, they need to see these strategies in action through numerous classroom visits and time to speak with students. To complete the buy-in process, parents need to feel they are a part of their children's lives and that their input and suggestions matter and make a difference. The journey to becoming the guide on the side may take time and energy, but the rewards your students will reap will last a lifetime.